Hello everyone, happy Wednesday. This is week 2 of our practice of this law, which is the law of least effort. Hopefully you had an opportunity to review the video from last week to recap all of the elements of this law. Basically, there are 3 elements. One is practicing acceptance. Things are the way that they are. They are the way that they are intended to be. The second component of this law is taking responsibility, owning our contributions to the results and outcomes that we are receiving, not blaming other people for what's happening in our life. We own the fact that we have set things in motion and that we have the opportunity to shuffle our feet and do something different, and yet it's all on us. It's not the responsibility of other people. The third component of this law is practicing defenselessness, which means that today we're not going to impose our ideas and wills on other people. It's not about being right today. It's about listening with an open mind. It's about accepting what other people have to say, giving consideration to what other people might be sharing and bringing into our lives at this moment. And just giving credence to that without having to have everybody accept things the way that we want them to be. So those are the 3 components of this law. Ultimately, as we think about this law, the practice of this law is intended to bring us peace. It's intended to bring us tranquility. It's intended for us to bring down the inner dialogue, to help us tether the inner dialogue that might be going on where we believe that things need to be a certain way, and that we should be at a different place, or we should be further along in our life than we are or that we're experiencing right now. These are all components of this law, and the purpose of it, by saying it is what it is, I am where I am, I'm going to be accepting of what happens in my life. This is all intended, from my perspective, to bring us to a place of peace, a place of tranquility, a place of centeredness. If you remember last week, we talked about the metaphor of being on the lazy river, kind of going with the flow of life events today and seeing what happens. Because sometimes what we think should be a good thing turns out not to be such a good thing, and vice versa. Sometimes when we think something should have happened another way, it turns out to be a blessing that it happened exactly the way that it did. Yet in theory, this is all great, because as we go through life, and we experience something that doesn't feel good or didn't work out the way that we wanted it to work out, if we say to ourselves, it is what it is, that may be enough to bring us to a place of peace. Because ultimately what we're trying to do is change the way that we're thinking. Okay? And if we change the way that we're thinking, we're going to change the way that we're feeling. And when we change the way that we're feeling, it's going to change what we do. They're all connected. Thoughts, the way that we think, contributes to or causes the way that we feel, and the way that we feel is going to determine the things that we do. So like I said, the practice of this law is really intended to bring us to a place of peace and acceptance of where we are, and that everything is going to be okay and is working out exactly the way it's intended to be. That is the practicality of this law and the purpose of this law. That said, we are human beings, right? We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And because we're having a human experience, we will be experiencing lots of emotions. So as we go through this day, I want you to call your attention to the way that you are feeling. Because the truth is, if we're practicing acceptance and we really don't feel like we're being accepting, if we're practicing defenselessness where we're not going to defend our opinion, and we don't defend our opinion, and yet we're feeling hurt and sad and frustrated as a result of that, we're really not practicing this law. We may be trying to demonstrate the components of it, and ultimately, though, at the end of the day, if we're not feeling a sense of peace, we need to be doing a little bit better, because that's where we need to get to. So I want to share with you a strategy that will help you to deal with some of the emotions that you might be experiencing throughout the day if we can't get to a place of peace, because it happens. We're human. This is not a Chopra Center lesson. This is something that I have been able to discern for myself with all of my practice over the last 15 years of looking at my results, paying attention to what I'm doing. These are the things that I have learned, the strategies. In fact, I even wrote about them in my book called The Inside Edge, 21 Insights to Align Your Success. I wrote about this strategy about paying attention to our emotions. Our emotions are very, very significant. They tell us a couple of things. They tell us the direction that we're moving in, and they tell us the speed at which we're moving. So specifically, when we're experiencing something positive, that means we're on the right path. That's good. When we're experiencing positive emotions, all is well in our world. I consider that a green light, go. I want to spend some time talking about negative emotions because energy is our emotions, and they have like an energetic vibration to them, so they all feel a little bit differently. There's a difference between anger, and there's a difference between frustration, and there's a difference between sadness, and there's a difference between feeling blue. There are little minor differences to each of these emotions on this emotional spectrum. And for us, when we're experiencing anything that's negative, that's a red light. That means that we need to stop and pause for a moment and see what's going on here, because it could mean a couple of things. It could mean that we are on the wrong path. It could mean that we have a thought that's creating this feeling. It's our interpretation that's actually creating it. And we can do either one of two things. We could change the way that we're thinking, and if that helps us to feel a little bit better, that'll be great. Or we're going to pay attention to how we're feeling and the thoughts that it's evoking, and we need to do some work to figure out where those thoughts are coming from. In any case, we have to deal with the emotions that we're being presented with. Ultimately, by practicing the law of least effort, we want to bring ourselves to a sense or a place of peace. If we're feeling negative about anything, we're not in a sense of peace, and it's something that we need to get to. So this is typically what happens when it comes to emotions that are negative. People usually choose one or two options. We either explode or we implode. When we explode, that means that we're taking this burst of negative emotions and we are releasing them into the environment in a negative way. That means that we're either going to have a verbal altercation with someone. We could have a physical altercation with someone. It means that we might be frustrated on the road and start yelling at somebody. It could mean that we feel like we're going to take our phone and throw it, break something, harm our computer. Anything that would be this release of emotions would be what I would consider exploding. Okay, it's successful in the fact that it releases the emotions from within and we release them into the external world. The problem with releasing them in that regard is that we have the aftermath of that. So that means that we've successfully released our emotions, and yet now we've got other things that we need to deal with, that we have set into motion, right? If we accept the fact that I just blew up, now I've created more problems for myself. Either I damaged a relationship because I shot off my mouth, and now I have the aftermath of that I have to rectify, or I broke something that has to be replaced. Either way, it's something that's destructive. It's a destructive release of energy. That's not what we're looking to do, okay? So that's what happens when we explode. The conversely to that, we have people that are not confrontational, so are not likely to spout off or express their energy externally. Instead, what we do is we take those emotions and we push them down and we ignore them. And we're going to hope that by not addressing them, they're going to go away. That's another bad strategy, and here's why. Because that energy has to go somewhere. And the fact is, even if we're not releasing that energy or transcending that energy, and we're bottling up that energy inside us, what's going to happen is we're going to create illness. We're going to create dis-ease. Lots of statistics demonstrate the fact that people that have experienced a lot of tension and stress in their life have a lot of physical ailments. That's because we're bottling things up inside of us and we're not addressing it. We're not dealing with it. Not a good strategy, especially since in this lifetime, since we're spiritual beings inhabiting this physical vessel, this is all we've got in this physical world during this lifetime to use to have our life experience. So we want to be taking care of ourselves, and imploding or bottling emotions down inside of us is not going to be serving us well. So these are both examples of how releasing energy is not going to serve us. Those are destructive examples, or they're examples of the destructive release of energy. Now, we need to release these emotions. We need to get rid of them. We need to transcend them. We need to express them, because we have to get rid of them if we want to get to a place of peace. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to focus our attention on, how do I express myself? How do I release this energy in a way that's constructive? What does that mean? That means that I'm going to do something that there is no negative aftermath as a result of it. I'm going to do something to express these emotions in a way that will serve me or somebody else in a beautiful way. So let me give you an example. You could do physical exercise. Physical exercise is a great thing. When I'm experiencing negative emotions or negative energy, and I do. We're human. Everybody's human, and everybody. I don't think anybody's exempt. The only person that may be exempt might be Deepak Chopra, because he's the most peaceful man I've ever seen or met in my life. The man is like so even keel. I desire to be and experience life the way that he does. He's just so peaceful. Unfortunately, I haven't evolved to that state yet, and so I'm still a work in progress. So I have to do something different. So what I do is I need to do something physical. For me, it could be going for a brisk walk. It could be doing some yoga. It could be meditation, although I will say that meditation is not physical enough for me. Lots of times if I have too much energy that I need to transcend or release, I definitely need to do something physical. Some people might want to punch a punching bag. Some people might want to push weight at the gym. Anything physical that's going to move our body and move these emotions out of us or through us would serve us well. I'll give you a great example of something that I chose to do. And it's not, like I said, the big things that seem to knock me off center. And it's not one or two little things that ever seem to knock me off center. What seems to knock me off center and get the better of me is when I experience these rapid fire events of things that are just not flowing the way that I want to flow. And it doesn't seem to matter when I say it is what it is or I accept it. It seems like they are just accompanied by so much energy that I need to do something with it. So one day I was having a day like that. And I woke up and I decided that there's a planter outside of my kitchen window that's a common area planter. It's really not my responsibility, and ultimately at the end of the day I have to look at it. And it's been overgrown since 1995, since I've moved in to my home. And so this day that I was having such an edgy day, a day where I felt like I was very frustrated. I felt like there was a day that I had very short fuse, and it didn't really matter what I said to myself. I was just experiencing all this energy that I needed to release. I figured this was the day that I was going to tackle the planter. So long story short, it took me 5.5 hours and 13.5 garbage bags to completely gut that planter. By the end of that day, I was completely exhausted. And I actually even got a tan because I was out in the sun for so many hours. Even though I felt exhausted, I felt great. I successfully transcended that energy and expressed it in a way that was constructive. Because here's what happened. Once I was done and I hauled all those garbage bags to the dumpster, I had this beautiful planter that I walk by every single day. I look out my window and I see every single day that looks amazing. It looks absolutely amazing. And I have this sense of accomplishment. So I took all of that negative energy and I converted it to what I call a multiple payoff, because I feel a sense of accomplishment and a sense of beauty and a sense of peace every time I look at this planter, because I did something constructive. I did something to make my life better. And that is what we're looking to do when we're experiencing high levels of negative emotions. Find a way that works best for you. That might not be the activity for you. Whatever the activity is for you, I encourage you on a day that you're feeling edgy, where we're moving through the day of least effort, especially on Wednesdays, as we're moving through that day, where we know that today is a day that I'm supposed to be getting to a place of peace, recognizing that everything is the way that it is, recognizing that everything is the way that it's intended to be, that it's not up to me to exert myself on other people if I can't get there intellectually or emotionally, because I've got all of this energy that's running through my body. I encourage you, my advice to you is to find something that you can do that will serve you well, something that you can do to release that energy in a way that will bring you multiple payoffs, because that's going to help. Because sometimes it just becomes overwhelming and we're not as successful as we'd like to be. And sometimes words just aren't enough to convert our feelings that are attached to that interpretation. So that's an excellent way to take a destructive situation or taking these negative emotions that we might be experiencing and putting them forth in a constructive way that will best serve us. It's all about the release of these emotions. It's all about getting ourselves into a peaceful state so that the next thing that happens during the day, we can be on that lazy river. We can go with the flow because we have successfully released all of the other energy that we might have been feeling that would be getting in the way of us feeling peaceful. Because that's the goal for today. The goal is to experience peace by letting go of how we think things should be, how we think circumstances should be, how we think we should be, how we think others should be. Today's the day to release all of those things. And there's going to be times when we're practicing this law that we're going to need a little bit of extra effort on our part to do something to release all of the energy that we could be absorbing from the dynamics that are happening around us. We're not always in a very zen place. We're not always in an environment that's conducive to the practice that we're experiencing that day. And sometimes we're in an environment on a regular basis that could be very, very toxic. Do something with that energy and do something that doesn't create an aftermath. Create an aftermath externally for relationships that we have to repair, or internally for illnesses that we'll have to overcome. Choose wisely. Choose something that will help you release that and provide multiple payoffs in your life so that you're not having to deal with the aftermath. And ultimately, it's going to bring you to a place of peace, and it's going to allow us to do what we need to do to flow smoothly through the dynamics of life. So that's my advice for you today. Good luck. Make it an amazing day, and we'll see you tomorrow.